That's a good policy.
Yep. And we have a no Zoom apology policy as well. We assume your children are going to walk in front of the camera, that your cat will step on the keyboard, that the Amazon guy is going to be at the door.
Dogs are going to go crazy when someone rings the doorbell. Yeah, yep. Yeah, that's a good one.
It's easy. When it doesn't happen, it's kind of nice, but we just assume that that's the standard. That's actually what's going to happen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Joe.
I was part of the Rotary in Steveston, which is in Richmond, BC, but Steveston has a separate one. And we had several Rotary exchanges.
Excellent. We were thinking about getting on that train again before COVID sunk its teeth in. So
I've really enjoyed having. We still have relationships with our Rotary exchange students.
Excellent. Stippy and Rachel, Ted's there, and Wayne.
Yeah.
Lyle.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning,
everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Here comes Lisa and Linda.
Good morning.
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 Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Joe. That was a great concert. I watched the whole thing on Sunday.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Same here. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well done to you and all the people involved in that. It was a great job you did.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Much
appreciated. How much they raised?
Yeah, we don't know that yet, Lyle. There's something wrong with your microphone.
Yeah,
it sounds like a high school announcement.
Yeah, you're really loud.
Okay.
It's distorted.
So, Joe, is there any way to be able to monitor how many people turned in to watch it?
There is, yeah. Somebody, I think Rachel actually was keeping track of, because there are numbers that come up in the side, and I was watching them go up and down and freaking out. But the whole thing, like that counts the, I don't know, it was either Mark or Rachel who had the total numbers. But, they come and go, and there's some way to get the total views. I think Mark had the total views, and they were up in the thousands, but up in the many thousands.
And you have to remember the multiplier effect. We have 4 people watching at our house. We counted for 1 on your screen, right?
That's true.
So, right.
And also one of the things, it was great that you watched for 4 hours. So did I. I mean, that's fantastic that you would watch, because I thought it was just great the whole way. But, it was designed for people to come in and out as they wanted. We knew that, the day it's a Sunday and before Christmas, and who's going to, a lot of people are running around. So, they might pop in and out. And so we gave them enough time to do that.
Oh, very good.
That Callista is really talented. She's
she's great.
Singer. Yeah, she is.
She's super talented.
Yeah.
My favorite, though, hands down, and Lyle, I think you might agree with me based on one of your comments. Girl with the kazoo stole the show for me, right?
Leah Daniels.
As soon as you pull out a kazoo, you got me, right?
Leah also, she's a yodeler. She learned how to yodel when she was a kid.
Really?
And she yodels, and she used to do songs with yodeling in them. She doesn't do them anymore. But she actually has a video that I was tempted to post, but it was a CBC video. It was like CBC Music, and I'm not sure I wanted to steal their video, but she did a whole video for CBC Music on yodeling.
Well, if anyone's earned the right to steal something from CBC, it's you, Joe.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, Joe, who was the choir? I thought the choir is brilliant.
The choir is the Toronto. Which choir? There were a bunch of them.
There was that really nice black lady.
Singer. Nicole. That's the Toronto Mass Choir, and they are like one of the great gospel choirs in Canada, or maybe North America, maybe the world, who knows. Right. And I had a long relationship with them from CBC. I knew them from there, and I saw Nicole's name, and she was the lead vocalist for them for about 10 years. Yeah. And so I reached out to her, and she said, yeah, sure, because I knew Karen, the head of the choir. But that's the Toronto Mass Choir. And if you really want to hear some of their music, just Google Toronto Mass Choir. Okay. And they have some stuff. They also have this on their Facebook page. They got tons of music. Okay. Something else they did during the pandemic, which if I'd known about it, I might have asked to borrow it. But.
All right. Well, listen, now that we've got Lloyd Rang, we can start, right, Lloyd? So welcome everyone. Welcome to the December 22nd edition of the Bowmanville Rotary Club's online experience. Thanks for joining today, everyone. A few toasts. You know what? I'm going to put a toast ahead of the Queen because it's just that important, and we're coming off chatting about it. Here's to Joe, Rachel, Lloyd, Claire, Jen, everyone involved in this weekend's concert. It was fantastic. Here's to you guys.
Here's to
Cheers.
you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, and slightly down the pecking order, to Her Majesty the Queen. The Queen.
On to Canada.
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 And finally, Rotary International.
Rotary International.
You know what? One more. We're heading into lockdown here. Here's to everyone, grocery store workers, to nurses, to everyone. Here's to you. And they should have been at the top of the pecking order. All right. No one tell the Queen I said that. Okay. I don't want our relationship to suffer. Okay. On to the invocation with Mr. Roy Snow. Take it away, Roy.
Good morning. Creator and sustainer of all that is or ever will be, accept our thanks for this day and for all its blessings. We ask that you would guide and direct our club, its leaders, and our service activities. Bless our fellowship today, and as we approach Christmas tide, may we be filled with the wonder of Mary, the obedience of Joseph, the joy of the angels, the eagerness of the shepherds, the determination of the Magi, and the peace of the Christ child. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. That was excellent. Okay, on to some announcements. I'm going to start with some sad announcements and then move on to happier stuff. We had 2 resignations made official last week. Donna King resigned because, well, she moved to Port Hope. You know, it's no surprise that she hadn't really been taking part in the online experience anyways. She spends most of her time in Cobourg, Port Hope because of the nature of her business. And she's already reached out to folks in Port Hope. And once COVID is over, fully intends to join the Rotary Club there. So there's a loss. The other one we all saw coming, I guess, but hope many of us hope for a different outcome. Kevin Anion has decided to leave the club for the time being, anyways. I think Jason is holding out hope that he can convince him to come back after he gets his feet underneath him at his new gig. So those were a couple of sad announcements. Here's some good news. Last night, Rachel dropped well, I actually picked up a check from Rachel from the special event committee at OPG. They've donated $3,000 to our club. And that's a direct result of us hosting their employee barbecue the other day. So, wow. So pretty fantastic, right?
Good.
Next one, we got a check for $500 and a lovely Christmas card from a gentleman named Bassam Karam. Don't know him. Going to reach out to him though.
Oh, I know him. I used to work with him. Yeah.
Okay, that's
the care program.
Pardon me?
Child is in the respite care program.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. Now we got the connection. That's excellent. I'll read you the note, or do my best, because he's got some pretty fancy cursive here. Ladies and gentlemen of the Rotary Club of Bowmanville, another new year and Christmas are here with added COVID-19 challenge, but yet you persevere to fulfill your commitment to your charity. May God grant you the wisdom and strength to keep carrying the torch of hope goodness, kindness, and generosity. May this torch carry, may this torch you carry pieces and shatters the darkness of despair and hopelessness. Merry Christmas, wishing you and your families all the best in the new year, the Karam family. Very nice.
Good.
Next one, another lovely card. This one will also get us in the feels, as the kids say. This is from Elfie Crone, and it came along with the $250 check. This is a big thank you to the Crone's crew that helped me with my fall cleanup. To you and your family, all members of the Rotary Club, a very happy Christmas. Sincerely, Elfie Crone. And could you please ask for a tax receipt? So I'll make sure that Kevin gets a tax receipt to her. So that was
a comment as well. Barbara was talking to Elfie yesterday or the day before, and she's still feeling very low.
Yeah, your thing.
We can't hear anything you say, Lyle.
Yeah, your mic's messed up, Lyle. I think it's too loud and it's distorting, but guessing there. And finally, I don't know if everyone gets the does everyone get the AG updates from Mark Chipman?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Then I don't need to cover that. I don't need to cover that then. Okay. With that, let's move on to our birthdays and anniversaries. Pauline.
Yes, President Steve, there's been some seasonal births with our Rotary Club. The first birthday we celebrate this week is Tim Funchion on the 23rd. Tim has a birthday. Very next day on Christmas Eve, Junior Rafano has a birthday. And on Boxing Day, Joe Soloway has a birthday. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Hey.
Thank you.
That's
fantastic. Thank you, Pauline. Okay.
I interrupted, Steve. Is this any better?
It's way better. Yeah, perfect.
I just wanted to say that Barbara was speaking to Elfie yesterday or the day before, and she's still feeling very low, very lonely.
Well, that's going to lead into something I was going to say later, but I may as well hit it now. Folks, we're heading into lockdown. I don't need to tell you all that. Let's make a point of reaching out to folks, every couple of days as appropriate and as you feel comfortable. Folks you haven't heard from, talked to in a while, folks you think might need just to pick up. You don't need to talk to them for an hour. Just reach out, say hello, because we remember what March and April were like. And I think we're going to start getting that feeling again. So challenge all of us to call each other and those folks we don't see on the calls every week. So thanks for that reminder, Lyle. And Elfie's clearly on that list. I would put Ross Metcalf on that list of folks to ring as well. Okay, with that, over to Lisa Tamblyn to introduce Laura Tamblyn Watts, our speaker of the day. And Laura, I have enabled screen sharing for you.
Sorry, I just need to pull over so I can do my introduction here. I'm just on my
safety
drive
first.
to work.
Safety first. We like you, Lisa.
That's
right.
Well, it is my pleasure this morning to introduce Laura as our guest speaker. And I'm even more happy, thrilled that she is joining us. She's joining us from Whistler this morning. So for her to get up and be up and at it at 4:30, kudos to her. Laura is a lawyer, an advocate, a researcher, and she is the CEO of CanAge, which is Canada's national senior advocacy organization. Laura's work focuses on aging, inclusion, consumer rights, and social justice. Laura's expertise has been called upon quite often, and she was a regular fixture on CBC Morning News when the pandemic first hit Canada back in the spring. As the numbers of COVID cases rise at alarming rates across Canada and Ontario braces for another lockdown, Canada's aging population is certainly going to be quite vulnerable yet again. This morning, Laura will offer her insights and expertise on Canada's aging population, COVID, and long-term care facilities.
Excellent. Over to you, Laura.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And it's deeply impressive that you're driving, or they're kind of driving. But I have to say 4:30 for any swim parents here or hockey parents or anything else is not an unusual one. So thanks so much for joining. I'm so delighted to be part of this today. My family comes from that area, both sides of my family. My grandmother's farm is in Pontypool, and the other side of the farm, my husband's farm, is in Orono. And so it feels a little bit like home. And my mom was raised in Bobcaygeon. So today we're looking at a lockdown, which some of us think probably should have happened a long time before this. And the scope of what we're going to talk a little bit about, I was going to focus in on kind of what's happening broadly, but also a little bit of what's happening in long-term care. I was sharing with Steve and Joanna and Pauline and a few folks before that actually in a few hours, I'm making our presentations to the Long-Term Care Commission, which is doing a bit of a deep dive into what's been happening in long-term care. So I thought I would just kind of spend a little bit of time, and I'd love for questions, and I'm good at monitoring the chat at the same time if folks like to do that. And I'm just going to hope that you can see the slides here, and of course really happy to share the slides afterwards as well. So just a super quick introduction of who we are. So our organization is called CanAge. We're a national seniors advocacy organization. And I thought I would just talk a little bit about some of the landscape issues that have been happening with older adults in Ontario and across Canada during the time of COVID-19, because the landscape is really an important piece as well. So one of the challenges, though, as I sat in this room, and this orchid made it onto TV quite regularly, is, people asking, were you shocked, were you surprised about, how hard COVID hit older people, and in particular into long-term care? And then they asked, well, were you shocked or were you surprised about the conditions in long-term care? And, this is where you take a deep breath and say, well, shocked perhaps, but surprised, no. And I think it's really important to start off by saying, there's wonderful long-term care facilities, and many of us will have had folks that we know or loved ones in some fantastic places with wonderful care. And there's some others that are not as up to the challenge. It's important to remember that we were talking about a fairly broken system prior to COVID-19. And I mean, just to give you a sense, in the last 30 years, we had 21 reports on seniors' care in Ontario alone. So to give a sense of the scale of the question, we have about 76,000 people in long-term care in Ontario. We have a waiting list of about 36,000 people trying to get into long-term care in Ontario. The average crisis wait list. So this is a crisis. I'm not talking somebody who thinks that at some point they might need to go into long-term care. I mean, a person who right now has no place to go and can't stay at home is about 6 months long. This is all pre-COVID-19. We are going to lose about 30,000 long-term care beds in Ontario within 5 years, now 4.5 years, because they don't meet the requirements for sprinklers. And Ontario has some of the oldest long-term care housing stock in the country. We have the largest proportion of what we call ward rooms, 3 and 4 people in a room. And the conditions in many of the older housing stock would have shared bathrooms in some cases of 6 to 10 people and shared bathing facilities of 20 to 30 people, all often without, as I say, sprinklers and without regulated individual heat or air conditioning. And that again is pre-COVID-19. So when we knew that the movement of COVID-19 from Asia to Europe was hitting older people who are by their nature in a congregate setting, who are most frail, who don't get into don't get into long-term care without very significant frailty. I mean, the reality is we have many more people who need the care, as I said, about half to a third. So was it surprising that it went rampant and is still rampant? No, I don't think it was surprising by anyone's estimation. Was it shocking? Sure. And so I thought I would take us through a little bit of arc of where we have been, where we are right now, and what do we think it's going to be like in 2021. It's also important to give a little bit of broad context about what's happening also, in the space. When we were working in the area of elder abuse and neglect, as we have as a central focus point of one of our pillars, within about 3 weeks, we were seeing about a 10-fold increase in elder abuse and neglect. So how prevalent is it already? We know about 1 in 10 older people report formally being abused or neglected. We know it's much more like about 1 in 4 older people are abused or neglected over the course of their life in Canada. And we were seeing support services, for instance, services like the Senior Safety Line run by Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, who typically would have about 800 calls in a month. We're having about 800 calls every 3 days with what they call a drop rate of 85%. What that means is only 15% of the calls could make it through. And those 15% skyrocketed reports to 800 calls every 3 days. So we knew that there was a huge set of broader impacts in the community. So this isn't necessarily likely long-term care. This is people in the community. A lot of that had significant increase, of course, in financial elder abuse, whether that be from strangers and targeted frauds and scams. Many cases from older people being locked up with their abusers or family members and friends moving home. And remember, about 2/3 of most elder abuse and neglect is perpetrated by family and friends, with the exception of financial elder abuse. And the percentages, for my number of people here, the percentages shifted, but it doesn't mean there was less. Rather, there's so much external frauds and scams specifically targeting seniors that now it's about 50-50. So it really, it's not less, it's more. It's just that it's balanced the weight. Giving you a sense, we routinely do, webinars on things like elder abuse and frauds and scams, and we'll get a couple hundred people. We posted a webinar with the National Anti-Fraud Centre, the RCMP, the Ontario Provincial Police, Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, and a few others. And we had 1,000 participants in 3 days sign up. And when I say that it was so profound, I mean, it was really significant. We also know that we've had some version of a basic income in Canada, whether it's been the CERB or whether it's been the similarly priced amount through unemployment insurance. And it's important to remember that that money is coming from somewhere. So it may feel like we've been floating our economy for a while, but at some point the piper has to pay. And so we're really worried that austerity is coming. And so when we're looking at where, investments need to happen, the concern is if they don't start happening soon, yet again, older adult care, seniors care will quite likely get shunted to the bottom of the pile. We've also had, thank goodness, increased coverage for things like flu shots, particularly seniors and people who have immune compromised systems. They're supposed to get the high dose flu shot. But despite the fact that we do flu shots every single year, this year was actually a logistical disaster. And when the Premier said out loud and on camera that there will be a flu shot for everyone, that they've ordered enough flu vaccine for all Ontarians, it was hard to understand that, because we knew for a fact that the recommended kind of herd amount from our federal government NACI recommendations is about 80% vaccination. And yet Premier Ford, I can confirm, only ordered enough flu vaccine for 40% of the population. And flu is a one-shot kind of deal for something that people already know about. You know, a COVID vaccine is 2 shots within 30 or 28 days from each other. And we have no registry for vaccines, and we have no information sharing. And already we are seeing challenges, as they say, rolling out basic shots. So this idea of rolling out COVID shots in some type of way that is coherent and prioritized is a challenge that we have to really think about. You know, many of us would hear time and time again about the different kinds of long-term care. And there was a really strong narrative about for-profit care and public care, and mostly people forgot about municipal care. But I just thought it would be helpful to just spend a minute and actually unpacking what those issues mean, because it is actually fairly important. So it's important to remember, if you have 2 hands, that one pocket is the money that goes into essentially the housing component. And that is private pay by anyone, whether you're in the public system, you know, OHIP covered, or whether you're in a private, like, doesn't matter, you're still paying. And there is a very specific formula. It's about $62 to $88 based on a calculation of whether your room is a private room, a shared room, or a ward room, and how modern the building is. And so if you can't pay, it's covered, but otherwise anyone, doesn't matter if the, as I say, doesn't matter if the long-term care home is public, private, or municipal, you're still paying a daily rate. Think of it as kind of your hotel rate. In your other hand are all the things that is everything else, right? So it's your nursing care, it's your food, it's supposed to be your incontinence products, it's any other thing that's in long-term care, and that is paid for by the government. Again, regardless of whether it's going to a not-for-profit, a private, or a municipal home. So the funding models are exactly the same. The only thing that's different for a for-profit home is if they offer added services, in theory, right? So if you're gonna get your hair done, or you're having other special trips to Stratford, and so on and so forth, there's additional services that you can purchase. To be also fair, you can often purchase those additional services as well in the not-for-profit. So there is this really deep narrative about the divisions of not-for-profit, private, and municipal, and yet in structure, it really is only the ownership model. And it's important to remember that in Ontario, we have about 60% of long-term care home delivered by for-profits, about 40% making up not-for-profit and municipal homes. What is true is in Ontario, in the first wave, where it got into for-profit homes, particularly those who had red flags on them already, it kind of went more rampant. That's not specifically true if you see, for instance, some of the ones in Bowmanville, which was one of the earliest homes. And so it's not, you have to be a little bit careful with the narrative around the for-profit or not-for-profit homes. We did not include long-term care in 1987 when we drafted the Canada Health Act. I don't believe we meant not to. It's just that in 1987, the average age of death was 76.4 years. And we actually just mostly didn't have long-term care because we didn't live that long. Now people are living kind of a third of their lives past 65 in many cases. And our children can certainly live to 100. My grandmother, who lived in Bowmanville, lived till 94, and she went through the Depression. So, I mean, we know that people are living longer. So it's important to remember the only difference with the Canadian long-term care funding is supposed to be that a not-for-profit home is reinvesting the money back in. A municipal home is getting the money allocated every year by budgets of the city. And a for-profit home is supposed to be paying out dividends. And that's certainly an issue that was a contentious one when the long-term care homes were getting transfers of funds and the for-profit homes were also paying out dividends. So that was a really important challenge. You know, I'm sitting in BC, which is where I was on March the 16th, when my friend Carrie Baisley, who's also a CanAge fellow, was in charge of the response for Lynn Valley, which was the first outbreak of long-term care in Canada. And it's important to be able to kind of look at the arc of response between the provinces. And I wrote an article about that. Really happy to share that with Lisa and Steve, and if anyone else would like it as well, which kind of takes us through how COVID hit long-term care, but also what the differences were in terms of response and what impact those different responses had on, you know, fancy words of, you know, mortality and morbidity, but really just means, you know, death and illness. And it is significant. So by the middle of March, very shortly, days after COVID-19 was found in British Columbia, Bonnie Henry instituted a single site response for staff, which meant that staff who were moving between many facilities could only work at one site. She put a 1-800 number in and prioritized personal protective equipment and testing for long-term care home. She locked down the visitors, allowing still essential family caregivers, although to be fair, they didn't do a great job of that, but we can talk about that later. They added the availability of a new layer of additional staff, including people who were not providing direct physical help to seniors, but were helping to run the organization. So administrators, people who are helping with food and support, so sort of non-touch staff. And it was also a much younger building stock in BC. So very few shared facilities, the odd one, but very few. She also put in connections to hospitals for support and left inspections in place. So that's what happened in British Columbia in March. You know, by contrast, in Ontario and Quebec, despite organizations like ours working together weekly on calls, and at the beginning daily on calls, the CEOs of the major organizations were working together constantly, trying to advocate for those types of responses. Premier Ford and also the Quebec government did not institute those changes until the end of April. And that lag of, it's formally 5 weeks, but it actually took more like 6 or 7 weeks to put into effect, changed the mortality rate from, you know, 10% to 100%. What I mean by that is there was a 10x death rate in Ontario and Quebec by not putting those measures in place. So they had the same original infectious spread. There was a little bit of difference in terms of the building structure, but mostly those measures were not put in place. Indeed, I will never forget sitting in this very room on the phone with a woman who's the CEO of a long-term care facility, and this was in the beginning of April. And she was south of Ottawa, and she had 86 residents, very high needs residents. And remember, just to give you a sense, about 90% of all residents in long-term care in Ontario have cognitive impairment. And typically most have incontinence as well. And that's just because there's so few spots that you essentially don't get into long-term care in Ontario unless you've got both incontinence and cognitive impairment, plus at least 1 to 2 other illnesses. She was calling me and weeping and begging, did I know anyone who could come and help? And I said, can you tell me about what's happening right now in your home? She said, we have an outbreak. I said, okay. You've got 86 residents. Yes. I said, how many staff showed up today? And she said, there's me and my administrator. No other staff came for 86 high needs residents. Staffing shortages were already so profound prior to COVID-19 that there's only about 5 minutes to support a full staff help for individual residents. We're talking about 4 hours of help a day. Right now it's at 2.75 hours a day. The reality is it's actually minutes a day in many long-term care homes. In that one, we were literally calling anyone we could and begging the government to put emergency measures in place. I recall having a meeting with the Ontario Caregiver Organization, the Ontario Long-Term Care Association, Advantage Ontario, the Ontario Association of Residents Councils, Family Councils Ontario, and putting together a strategy to call nail salons and hairdressers across this province to drop off gloves and masks, because Dr. David Williams refused in public many times to prioritize long-term care by hoarding personal protective equipment, cleaning supplies, and testing in acute care. Now, I'm not saying acute care is not a problem. It is for sure a problem. But we saw in Italy, we saw in France, we saw in Spain that it was going to get into long-term care. It hit the hardest. And when I spoke to that administrator and said, let me just be entirely clear, you have no staff besides you and essentially your secretary to provide needed feeding, bathing, toileting, meds management, activation therapy, no one for 86 people. She said, yes, because we have nothing to keep the virus safe. We have no PPE outside of our original stocks for flu. We have no additional testing. We have no support. And our staff are terrified. And many of them have children and older people at home. And let's be clear, staff in the caring professions tend to be very racialized, very low income. And Ontario is one of the places that pays staff least in this country. I don't think any of us will ever forget reading the whistleblower report that the military, who is trained to go into war-torn nations, felt that it had to send, both explaining the Quebec situation where 25 long-term care facilities had support, and in Ontario for the 5 and then expanded to 7 homes. It's important to remember as well that it wasn't only those 5 and then 7 homes that needed help in Ontario from the military. It's just that's all the resources that were made available. There were many other homes that actually were needing the help. And I think we will all remember the moment that we heard about the report about cockroaches and fly infestations in people's skin, about open wounds to the bone, about people who were not being given food and water, sometimes for a day, sometimes for more, people who are left on the ground crying, people left in their feces, one person being force-fed until they died. And people said, are you shocked and surprised? And I said, I hope I am always shocked, but I am not surprised. We've seen the federal government lean into long-term care in a way which is unique. And certainly for those of us who were glued to the throne speech, which I confess is probably not most people, but I sure was, we were looking to see whether the long-term care issues would make it to the federal level, because of course the division of powers is such that, you know, each level of government was kind of pointing at the other. Healthcare, of course, being provincial in its orientation, but public health being federal. And so we did see it. And right now, the premiers and the prime minister have been working to support development of national quality standards, which is one of the key calls that we've had. And we've been particularly asking for us to look to the Australian model, which had a much different outcome in long-term care, many of which was a quick response, which was also by having more modern buildings. And we learned a lot of key lessons about what works and doesn't work, which ordinarily you think would be implemented in the second wave. And so when the calls came from media and they said the second wave is upon us, and it looks in some cases to be worse than the first, are you shocked and are you surprised? And I said, I'm shocked, but I am not surprised. Because the pieces that we knew needed to be implemented on a quick level mostly weren't. Ontario and Quebec were in a very similar circumstance. Quebec, by contrast, made an announcement that they were hiring 10,000, what they call orderlies, you would call a personal support worker, at essentially a salary of $49,000 a year plus pensions and benefits. And they started mass hiring and mass training over the summer and have right now just about 5,500 new PSWs who are deployed in long-term care. Ontario has not, despite all calls for it, done mass training. They've noodled around a little bit with giving an extra $2 here and a little bit of a micro support in some other areas, and allowed for, at a response for emergency level, some additional staffing to be hired for non-care types of support. Again, administrators, people checking in, and so on. But we have not actually fixed it.
Laura?
We also did something, just to conclude, also did something that was a real shock to our system. We closed off caregiver visits. And so one of the things that we have seen is that essential caregiver visits, while they were concluded, led to really a mass decline in long-term care well-being for residents. So we saw, of course, loss of mental health and loneliness and social exclusion, but we also saw trackable changes to physical well-being, continence, movement, and so on. So where are we now? Not a lot better than where we needed to be before. We haven't really taken the steps. We know the steps, however. And so as I go into 2021 and I'm talking to the commission today, what I will say hopefully is this: we know the recipe to fix long-term care. We know what it needs to take. We've had 21 reports in 30 years to tell us. It's going to be a matter of implementation and political will. And that's, I'm hoping, a better start for the new year. Thanks.
Laura, thank you so much. Wow, that was informative. And to carry on with your theme, I think we're probably all shocked, but not surprised. You know, we've had good stories and bad stories here in Bowmanville alone. You know, things going on with Marmwood Care Center and how they're handling their staff and everything around that. We've had a great story at Strathaven. Sadly, they've got a burgeoning outbreak there for the first time during COVID. They've got a couple of cases there where they've been cleaned before. So hopefully they keep that under control. We have time for one or two questions if you do, Laura. Roy, I see your hand up.
Good morning, Laura. I come from a long-term care background. Prior to my current position, I've been administrator of several homes in Ontario, and I realized some of the stories and examples you used, unfortunately, does happen, but was not the reality for me. As you said, in Ontario, all homes play by the same rules. We got the same funding models. We had the same inspections. It seemed like I remember sneezing in my office and getting a call from the ministry, are you all right, Roy? That's how intense the inspections were in my experience. The question I have is, where were the pandemic plans in the homes that had the massive outbreaks? And I remember having to have a pandemic plan in place and exercised on occasions for inspections. The last home that I was administrator of up to 2 weeks ago, haven't had an outbreak yet. But we had a pandemic plan in place. So why didn't all, and it was a requirement, so why weren't these homes inspected with the same rules that I was inspected under?
Thanks so much, Roy. And again, I always want to say there's wonderful long-term care. I mean, and just because you've had an outbreak doesn't mean that you're also not a wonderful long-term care home. So it's important not to tether outbreaks to quality of care. What we need to tether is outbreaks to resources in many cases, that the system was massively understrained and underfunded, and has been understrained and underfunded prior. Roy, thanks so much for the question. So I think there's a couple pieces there. The first is that when Ontario decided that it was going to start measuring impact of COVID, they used the flu protocol, or they didn't actually use the pandemic protocol. And so what that means, and Roy will know, is that they would test up to 3 people per long-term care home. And if there were 3 positives, then they would declare the home an outbreak and they wouldn't test anymore. And that was the circumstance for almost 5 weeks. And so when you look at the loss of life or the infectious spread in the first month in particular, that was based on only knowing 3 cases. And they didn't retroactively test either, Roy. So they didn't actually use the pandemic protocol, because if you only know that there are 3 cases and you don't test when people are dying, that if they have COVID-19, then you have no idea. So it was a real failure to put it forward. The second piece is perhaps since you were doing administration, they rolled back the inspection protocols, which I'm sure you know. So there were only 9 comprehensive, which are unannounced and full inspections in the past year done in Ontario. And so they moved to response-based inspections, which meant they waited for someone to complain. So they changed the inspection protocols, and the pandemic plans then were not tied to infectious spread requirements. And on the third piece was, there have been additional administrator restraints. They were not allowed to keep or stockpile PPE, and they were not allowed to build up the required infection prevention and controls that they, in many cases, both OLTCA and Advantage Ontario were saying they were needs. So they were pretty crippled coming into it.
Laura, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Best of luck in front of the commission. Continue the good work that you do. And have a very Merry Christmas, and as much as we all can this year.
Thanks so much. And I'll just close by saying that there's a lot of resources on our website, including guides for visiting people, older people during the outbreak, things to do. And we have a wonderful holiday campaign called CanAge.ca/holiday cheer with activities every single day. I heard that there was some going on. We've got giveaways, intergenerational things to do, ideas to do with friends and family, socially distanced. So have a wonderful holiday. Thanks so much for letting me share a little bit of time with you this morning.
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to look that up. That's fantastic.
Thanks.
Okay, well, on to Happy Bucks now. I've got 2 really quick ones here. First off, hey, we won something. If you didn't see my email the other day, Aaron O'Toole, our MP, gave the club a community service medallion for our work during the pandemic. I didn't know it was coming. I just happened to watch his video. So I've reached out to him, and I'm going to ask him to join a call so he can kind of formally give it to us. He also spent a fair amount of time on social media boosting the concert the other day. So that was good. Other Happy Buck. It's escaping me right now. It'll come back to me. But let's let someone else have a turn. Johanna.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out to the hike last night. We had about 20 people. We had another family that came out, and it was a really good success. So thanks for Rachel for leading us in the dark along the path. I'd never been there before, and I think it calls for some bike riding. Maybe when we get onto the other side of winter, and the paths are open again, we might need to do a little bit of a bike trek. But it was a great hike, everybody.
Sounds good. Anyone else? Joe.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, it's kind of, you expect it, but I'll do it anyway. But I'm going to do it. I just want to thank. I really want to thank the club for your support, all of your support for this year's concert. Like I got the musicians. If without Mark, the show wouldn't have been put together. Without Rachel and Claire and Jen, and I guess the folks from Rise, nobody would have known about it. And without the sponsors like, you know, Steve and Lloyd and Jen and all the sponsors that Gail got and that Wayne got, we never would have made the kind of money we did, which was great. And we don't know how much money is coming in. And without the support of the other clubs, and really this was a multi-club effort, which was wonderful to see, backed by the district, which was really great. And so, you know, I'm pretty happy that we were able, you know, to do this for Feed the Need in Durham, and also to Ben and to Feed the Need team, Ben and Gail and Robin and Margot. These are people you don't know, but anyway, they're great. Gail knows them. And and thank you all. I mean, it was great. It's really great to be a Rotarian and to be part of this.
Thank you, Joe. Chris, I think you had one.
Yeah, I just to say that I missed some of the meetings in December. I was away in Ottawa visiting my daughter and doing some work on a rental property, trying to finish it off. Not quite done yet, but we're going to go back hopefully for a few days more. But it's great to be back and see everybody and keep it up.
It's great to have you back. Good
Thanks.
to have you back. Okay, moving on. Next up on our agenda, I think, is Chris Velasco. You want to give us an update from the fundraising committee, Chris?
Yep, thank you, President Steve. Just give everybody an update before we get into the holiday season here. So Steve already had mentioned the check that we received from OPG. We're waiting patiently for that from our event that we held at the beginning of October. So great support from OPG as usual. You know, annually they tend to support us fairly well. So it was a surprise for $3,000, and I think very generous from their aspect. We completed the art sale that has come and gone now. It was a month-long venture. Just to kind of give you a highlight of some of the things that we got out of that. We had 50 unique artists, Canadian artists, join the art sale, which was a win. You know, we didn't know what to expect with this first venture online. And neither did the Oshawa Art Association, who we paired with. So we had 50 artists, most of them from our area, from Durham region, Newcastle, Orono, Bethany. We did have one join from Montreal, and that just goes as far as the reach of the event. We had 5,000 unique visits to the website. And we had people from as far away as Europe, all over North America, Asia, everywhere looking at the website. Now they couldn't obviously purchase, but you know what, for the most part, we were getting the word out there. And that was thanks to Rachel on constantly promoting it on Facebook and using Facebook to its full capacity. We had 34 pieces sold, which helped about a dozen artists. We ended up making for the club about $1,800, for the Oshawa Art Association about $1,200, and the artists themselves garnered about $2,900. So we were able to help the community. You know, the artists who haven't been able to get out and do shows. To promote their work. It's their lifelong passion to want to share their art and sell it and hopefully make a few dollars to support their hobby. It was a great way to do it. We learned a lot on selling online, in fact, I've been reached out by many other art associations. Scarborough Art Association has reached out about the website. They all felt it was very professionally done, and hopefully this can be an annual event that we can grow every year with the Oshawa Art Association. So, two other comments I just want to make. We had a fundraising meeting last week. Just to review some of the things that we've already done the first half of this term. The next half of the term is not going to be any slower. We are starting to prepare for a Valentine's Day dinner event. So the idea was brought by Don Gleed that the Barrie Club has done for Christmas Eve. So what they did was they paired with a local catering company, and the catering company offered to make a Christmas Eve dinner for two. You had to pick it up at the catering facility, and they were charging $100. I don't know what the costs were associated with it, but done through the Rotary Club, I'm sure there was some opportunity to fundraise that. So we're going to do the same thing via Valentine's Day. And we're going to partner with maybe 2 or 3 local restaurants, a local florist, hopefully, and someone that can supply some chocolates. So we're hoping to promote a Valentine's Day delivery dinner event for 2. Given where we are right now and lockdown going at least to January 23rd, I think it's probably a great adventure for us to go down that road. And even if restrictions start to ease up on January 23rd, it's not going to be, packed houses in local restaurants. So we're hoping that we can get some of that. So be prepared to ask for some volunteer time to deliver food out to buyers and such. So hopefully we can get some traction on that. I'm going to reach out with some details. If you want to have a look, you can go onto the Barrie Huronia website and see what they're doing with regards to their Christmas dinner idea. And I don't think ours would vary too much away from that. The other thing is we are looking into doing a shredding truck event at March. So people would bring a box of their taxes from 1986 and need it shredded. We would charge them $10 or $20 depending on the size of the box. So we're getting some details on what that looks like. And the last thing we did talk, because it's always in the top of our minds, we did talk about ribs and brews for June. The consensus is, and I'd probably across the club as well, that we're not going to be able to hold a traditional ribs and brews event. So we're formulating game plans to do some sort of drive-through event or delivery event or something like that. So early stage planning, but we're pretty well resigned to the fact that I don't think in June we're going to be able to hold a big event. So.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's accurate, but active. We've always wanted to diversify, and boy, oh boy, you guys are doing it this year, planting seeds for future growth. I love it.
One thing else I just wanted to mention, obviously trees, Christmas tree, we sold out trees so long ago now, I forgot about them. We did fairly well. I don't know if Ted has the final numbers on that yet, but he'll share that when we have that. So. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. I'm going to call an audible here. I'm going to reorder things on the agenda just slightly to make sure we've got time for Fred. As I said in the announcements, we've got a lot of, a number of donations lately. One, I forgot, I was surprised yesterday, my little sister made a small donation to the club online from Ottawa. So that was kind of nice, and I'm feeling kind of embarrassed that it sat there without me acknowledging it. Got to check the account more often. But with that, Fred has a message he wants to deliver.
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yep.
Perfect. As being our custom, Debbie and I are going to make our annual donation to the Boneville Rotary Club in memory of those friends and family that have passed away. I'd just like to read the list, which I promised everybody I would do. And then before I do that, I'd just like to say thanks to Steve for giving me the opportunity to do this. March 15th, one of my third cousins, Pat Turetsky, passed away. April 3rd, George Crone, Chef George, passed away. May 3rd, Carol Harris, wife of my first vice principal, passed away. May the 4th, Doug Park passed away. Steven Stefanski passed away. In July, a key teacher on one of my staffs, Devin Biddle, an old friend from school, father and passed away, and a very prominent Rotarian in the Oshawa Club, passed away. My cousin Harvey Boyd passed away in October. That was tragic. Thank you, Ted. He never did get to sit in that chair. September the 1st, Arden McLaren, longtime friend out of Donovan, passed away. Professional dentist, terrific guy. Don MacArthur, a guy that I worked with for 40 years, passed away in Nova Scotia. I think you all knew Don, very active guy on Beach Street, and he was a counselor in Bowmanville. And to wrap up things, Jackie Lanczyk, she was 86, I think, passed away October 26th. Marilyn Webster, Harvey's wife, passed away. And last but not least, Stan Stralchuk, an old friend from junior high at King Street Public School in 1959. Our donation added up this year to $1,200. We'd like to present that to Bowmanville Rotary Club, specifically directed to Youth Services Club and to their project of remodeling the old fire hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you so much. Really nice. Okay, John, listen, we're at our hour mark, but we can afford to go over a few minutes. John, let's do the Sergeant at Arms. You're muted, buddy.
Okay, that's better. I had a lot of stuff here. Basically, it was a trivia thing, but Rotary questions. So the first one, how many people attended the first Rotary meeting on Thursday evening, February 23rd, 1905?
6.
3.
4. 4 is the answer.
Oh, come
Paul
on.
Harris, Sylvester Shield, Hiram Shorey, Gustav Lohr. Right. What was the first Rotary Club community project?
Installation of a washroom in the entrance to the subway.
That's correct. A comfort station, as they were called, in downtown Chicago. Public restrooms were typically found only in saloons at that time, and unaccompanied women were not permitted to enter saloons. Quick aside, what was the Bowmanville Rotary Club's first project?
Was it the change house down to the beach?
It was also a comfort station, Steve.
Okay.
But
down to the beach, right?
I believe.
Yeah.
Men with Friends, the Blue Boys, the Conspirators, the Round Table. What do these names have in common?
Are they nicknames for Rotary?
They were at the Algonquin Club in New York.
No. At the third meeting of the group in Chicago that would become Rotary, each of these names was considered for the new club. So can you imagine being a member of the Blue Boys or the Conspirators?
Well, we never get any Scottish Catholics joining the Blue Boys, that's for damn sure, right? So,
yeah. Could have been the Proud Boys.
No, I'll jump down a bit here. At the first Rotary convention in 1910, the keynote speaker, Daniel Carey of the Rotary Club of New York, told the audience that Rotary, which then had 16 clubs, would have 1,000 clubs around the world within 80 years. When did Rotary add its 1,000th club?
Ooh, don't know.
1980.
1935.
No. The 1000 Rotary Club was added in 1921.
Wow.
Only 11 years after his speech. Shows you the rate of growth, huh?
That's excellent, John. Thank you for that, John. Before we go over to Pauline for our quote of the week, a couple little quick things. Next week, we weren't planning a meeting. I'm going to open up a Zoom call at 7 o'clock on Tuesday evening next week. Just cocktail hour, folks. I'll send an email out. Bring a drink. Tell us about, let's share stories about how our COVID Christmas went, and we can even talk about who we think might need some help. Just a little bit of fellowship. Join, don't join. If there's only 2 of us on the line, that'll be a success for me. Hey, listen, keep your spirits up, okay? I don't think I can show you here. It's upside down and backwards. My socks say, I'm busy making a fucking difference, right? And my shirt says, I'm a ray of fucking sunshine. All right, so we're in lockdown. Try and keep a smile on your face. Pauline, over to you.
Very good. Well, since this is our last official meeting, this is my quote. Every end has a new beginning, and every beginning gives hope. Every hope requires action, and every action brings a challenge. I wish all my Rotarian friends the courage to face the challenges of hope for our new beginning in 2021. Have the very best Christmas you can, and Happy New Year to all. Shlan Java.
Thank you, Pauline. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Cheers.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Have a great New Year.
See you soon, guys.
Stay well.